Here I am videoing the construction of the bridge. There's a lot of noise because there's a generator going right in front of me. And you can see here where the steel has been laid out. The green part is for the bridge arch, which they will start putting more of up soon. So here is the green steel reinforcing rod, or re-rod, supported by a steel structure above the river, and it stretches all the way across the river, and you can see the other side of the arch on the other end. So there are some workmen down there, and they seem to be cleaning up, doing some pumping, getting ready to put platforms up to support the green steel reinforcing rod. This is very early in the process. The foundations have been dug and the base of the arches has been poured to support the rest of the bridge. Still running, backing up. You'll be curious to see how this comes out. Yeah. So this is the abutment, I think, that supports the anchor bars. I think the big black steel in the front are the anchor bars. So here I am videoing the new bridge construction. There's one guy working, a steel worker, on the base. You can see where the roadbed of the new bridge is going to go. It'll sit on top of those steel beams. And then you can see the green steel re-rod right here, which will form the arches of the bridge when the concrete is poured. And then you see it will go ashore back there where that yellow crane is. Okay, now I'm videoing by the fraternity houses, and you can see the men in the foreground at work. And you can see to the other side of the river, and you can see the dark red black steel I-beams that will support the bed of the bridge, and the green steel reinforcing rod that will form the arch once the concrete is poured. I made this drawing to show where the arches and where the deck will go to make sense of the photograph. You can see that the green arches curve up above and suspend the deck, and the deck is represented by the red rectangle. By the end of the first week in June, you can see that they have added the pre-stressed concrete beams that cross the deck and that will support the roadbed. These have been lowered into place by cranes. In the foreground is the reinforcing steel, which will be covered by concrete when the huge beams that connect the deck, when those are poured, when the concrete for them is poured. The green painted steel that you see right at the middle of the photograph is the reinforcing steel for the arches. At this point, they have only placed the steel at the bases of the arches. The arch is not at all complete. This is a very good view of the pre-stressed concrete beams that will support the roadbed. So here you see the Park Road Bridge, and that is the structural steel for the support columns, or for the arches. And then you see the beams that go across, stretching out away from us. Down below you see the arch that they cast before the river rose. Then down here you see it coming up from the water and going up above where it's reinforced by the green re-rod. And then you can see that it's going to form an arch that goes all the way over to the other side. Right at the center of the photograph is the enormously thick maze of steel reinforcing rod that will be covered by concrete when it is poured to form the beams that run parallel on either side of the bridge. So here we are, the bridge. You can see they've made a lot of progress. They're doing pours, they're putting in more steel. So there you see where the steel arches off to make the arches. And down there, they're setting the supports for the sidewalk. And over here, they're putting up the steel, putting the steel together for pouring, the reinforcing steel. And then up above there, they are doing some kind of installation. They are installing the anchors for the suspender cables that will hang down from the arches and that will hold up the deck of the bridge. And then farther down on the other side, you can see people way off in the distance putting up steel for the arch on the other side. And then this is the steel on our side for the arch. By August, the basic steel was in shape and the workers began to erect the scaffold that would hold up the arch. The lower area covered with plastic is one of the connectors or supports for the cables. The four vertical elements are the bases of the scaffold that will uphold the arch while the concrete is being poured. Now they are building the support scaffolding higher and higher. Here you can see where the arches will go in red and where the cables will support the deck in blue. By mid-September, they have completed the scaffolding and begun to place the steel beams that will support the concrete forms for the arch while the pouring takes place. Here you can see the west end of both arches with Hancher in the background. This is a good view from higher on North Dubuque Street of both arches. On June 22nd, they are installing the green steel that will reinforce the concrete arches. On September 29th, 2017, the workers poured the concrete for the north arch. They had placed wooden forms around the green reinforcing steel. Two cranes lifted two enormous buckets, one from each end of the arch. Each of the buckets was filled with concrete from very large concrete trucks on the mainland. One worker pulled the handle to unload the concrete into the forms, while the other workers vibrated the concrete so that they could be sure to fill up all of the cracks and crevices in between the steel reinforcing rods. Boy, they go fast.
Yeah.
A week after the pour, you can see the form stripped away from the north arch. And here is a view of the north and south arches together from just up the hill. They are ready to pour the south arch this week. At the beginning of November, the wooden forms for the arches were removed and the cables that support the deck were installed. Here you can see the newly installed steel cables. Here you can see a workman removing the steel support girders for the south arch. On December 20th, 2017, the workers poured the concrete for the bridge deck using an enormous concrete pumper. The huge boom that you see hanging over the entire site is the boom for the concrete pumper, which pumps the concrete out of the concrete truck and up through those tubes and then down to the deck, where it is then finished off by the workers. On January 21st, 2018, most of the forms have been stripped away from the deck and the arches. The major construction yet to be made is the approach ramp on each end of the bridge and the sidewalks on either side of the main arches. In these videos, you can see that the steel supports that have held the center span up all of these months have been partially removed, and in fact there are no blocks or spacers between the steel supports and the concrete arch. Very soon the steel beams will be cut and pulled out of the mud by the cranes. You can also see much more clearly the very elegant shape of the arches that support each end of the bridge and the approach ramps. You can see that they form an elegant Y shape with a central post rising up between them. If you look closely, you can see that there is no connection between the steel beams below and the concrete arches themselves.